I came across this story, and I was struck by how carefully it demonstrates the architecture of a friendship unraveling. Let me share it with you, because this is the kind of narrative that shows us how small choices accumulate into something irreversible. This is the account of a 29-year-old woman navigating what should have been one of the most joyful periods of her life. Her engagement, her wedding planning, the careful orchestration of a day she'd been dreaming about. But nested inside that joy is a different story entirely, one about expectations and consideration, about what we owe the people we call our closest friends. The setup is deceptively simple. Our narrator and her fiancé got engaged in June. They booked everything immediately: the venue, the date, the major suppliers, all the structural elements that make a wedding possible. And they did what you do when you care about people being there. They told their friend group right away. They wanted to give everyone time to plan, to mark calendars, to prepare. This detail matters more than you might think. It establishes intent, consideration, the desire to include the people who matter. Among those friends was a woman she considered close. Genuinely close. The kind of close where you're together almost every week for 2 years. The kind of close where this friend appointed herself as a bridesmaid before even being asked. And our narrator was perfectly happy with that because she'd already intended it. That's intimacy. That's trust. That's the foundation this entire story rests on. 4 months pass. The close friend gets engaged herself. Our narrator is happy for her, of course she is. This is what friends do. They celebrate each other's milestones, they hold space for each other's joy. And then the friend shares her wedding date, 6 days before our narrator's wedding. Notice how the tension shifts here. This isn't just about calendar proximity. Both weddings are being held in the same city, 4 hours from the metro. They share a friend group. The same people will be expected at both celebrations, will be traveling to the same location, will be managing logistics and expenses and time off work for events that are separated by less than a week. The narrator lives abroad. She's taken a 3-week leave, maximum, to return to her home country for her own wedding. She has no coordinator. Every day matters. Every hour has been accounted for. And when she tells her friend that she might not be able to attend because she'll be drowning in last-minute preparations during that final week, the friend's response is stark in its simplicity. "It's okay, I understand." And then she leaves the room. As if this information were merely procedural. As if it didn't matter whether the narrator could be there or not. This is the moment where perception changes, because our narrator had been sharing every detail of her wedding planning with this friend. She'd included her in the joy, the stress, the minutiae. She'd made space for her in the most intimate parts of this journey. And now, she's confronting the possibility that this consideration wasn't mutual, that the care she'd been extending wasn't being reflected back. The question she poses is whether she's wrong for feeling hurt, whether she's overreacting, whether she has any right to these emotions when, technically, her friend can choose any date she wants. And that's the painful paradox at the heart of this narrative. She's correct that her friend has autonomy over her own wedding date, and she's also correct that autonomy doesn't exist in a vacuum, that our choices impact the people around us, especially the people we claim to love. What unfolds next reveals the deeper pattern. Our narrator decides not to cut the friend off immediately. She tries to be generous, tries to remind herself that this is their wedding, not hers, that she has no control over their decisions. But something shifts between them. She feels it. She knows the friend feels it too. The architecture of their friendship has been altered, and there's no pretending otherwise. Then, a few months later, the friend's fiancé messages our narrator's fiancé with a request. "Be my groomsman." And not just be present, allot 2 to 3 days for preparation, for the role of an entourage member. 6 days before their own wedding, when the groom himself will need far more than 6 days to prepare for his own celebration. The audacity of this request is breathtaking in its thoughtlessness. Our narrator's fiancé declines politely. He explains what should be obvious. They have no coordinator, they have last-minute preparations, they need those days desperately. The friend also asks our narrator directly about being a bridesmaid, and she declines as well, just as politely. And then the friend asks, almost casually, whether they're still invited to our narrator's wedding. This is where the story takes a turn, because that question, are we still invited, carries weight. It acknowledges, perhaps for the first time, that their actions might have consequences. That choosing a date 6 days before your close friend's wedding, then asking for multi-day commitments during their final preparation week, might actually damage the relationship. The narrator is building something here, something we'll understand later. She's building boundaries where none existed before. She tells them honestly, she doesn't know yet. She needs to figure out the logistics, the seating arrangements, whether their presence would even feel right given everything that's happened. And the friend starts posting on social media, passive-aggressive content, the digital equivalent of a sigh meant to be overheard. Our narrator blocks her, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. She's trying to protect her peace during what should be a joyful time. The friend then sends what reads like a prepared statement. I respect your decision. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I didn't mean to create drama. But notice what's absent from that apology. There's no acknowledgement of the specific harm caused, no recognition of the pattern of thoughtlessness, no genuine reckoning with how her choices impacted someone she claimed to care about deeply. Our narrator doesn't respond. What would be the point? The friend has shown her repeatedly through action and inaction where she stands. And then the friend gets married. Our narrator isn't there. 6 days later, our narrator gets married. The friend isn't there either. The symmetry is almost poetic, except one absence was chosen through necessity and boundary setting, and the other was the natural consequence of choices made. And then comes the final reveal, the detail that reframes everything. The friend announces her pregnancy. She was already pregnant when she chose that wedding date. Which means the urgency to marry quickly had nothing to do with venue availability or scheduling conflicts, or any of the reasons one might charitably assume. She needed to marry before the pregnancy became visible. And she chose to prioritize that timeline over every other consideration, including the feelings of someone she called a close friend. Our narrator reflects on this now with remarkable clarity. She acknowledges that she made the right decision in setting boundaries, in declining the bridesmaid role, in protecting her own wedding experience from the chaos that friendship had become. She notes that she's now living back in her home country with her husband, building a new life, and she feels lighter for having released that friendship. She doesn't hate her former friend. She simply sees the situation clearly. This was someone who consistently prioritized her own needs without extending the same consideration she received. The beauty of this narrative is how it sits with us afterward, making us reconsider what we thought we knew about friendship and obligation. Because our narrator didn't do anything dramatic. She didn't create scenes or demand apologies or wage social media campaigns. She simply recognized a pattern, honored her own feelings, and made choices that protected her peace. She let the friendship go not because of a single transgression, but because the cumulative weight of thoughtlessness became too heavy to carry. Stories like this remind us why we tell them in the first place, because they honor the complexity of being human, of navigating relationships when care isn't mutual, of choosing ourselves without becoming cruel. This is the kind of narrative that deserves to be heard, because it shows us that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is recognize when someone isn't capable of loving us back the way we need. And then, with grace and clarity, we step away. If you've experienced something similar, a friendship that slowly revealed itself to be one-sided, a moment where you had to choose your own peace over maintaining a relationship that no longer served you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this narrative resonated with you, consider subscribing. I share stories like this because they matter, because they show us the quiet courage it takes to honor ourselves. Thank you for listening. Title suggestions primary. She scheduled her wedding 6 days before mine, then asked my fiancé to be her groomsman alt 1. My best friend booked her wedding the week before mine. Here's what happened next alt 2. She chose her wedding date without considering mine, then expected me at hers alt 3. The friendship that unraveled over 2 weddings 6 days apart.